Hey guys, Carl from Purple Moose Place. Today we're taking a look at Tiny Towns, a city building, or in this case town building game for 1 to 6 players, designed by Peter McPherson and published by AEG. This is going to be a little bit different than most of my normal playthroughs because if you've got a copy of the game, you can feel free to join and play along with me during my playthrough. If you already know how to play the game, feel free to look down in the timestamp below to skip ahead to the playthrough, or if you really just want to hear my thoughts on the game, again, click down below to skip directly to my review. With that being said, let's get down to the game. I'll show you how to play, and we'll get into our playthrough. In the game of Tiny Towns, players will take on the role of a mayor in a tiny town in the forest, represented here by a 4x4 grid, with the goal of becoming the most prosperous tiny town. Of course, if you've played any games before, you can probably guess that prosperity in this game is represented by points. So the winner of this game will of course be the player with the most points at the end of the game. Now how we score points is one of the things that makes this game so unique. In each game that you play, you will be playing with 7 different shared buildings and 1 unique building for each player. In every game, in the base game at least, you will always be playing with the first building as the cottage. And the cottage simply scores 3 points if the building is fed. I'll explain what that means in a minute. So every game is going to start with the cottage. For the other 6 shared buildings, each of the shared building types comes with 4 different cards in the base game. So every game you're choosing randomly one of these 4 cards for each type of building. I show this type of building first because we mentioned that the cottage can only be scored if it is fed. These red buildings represent food sources, and this is how you will feed your cottage. For example, the granary feeds all cottages in the 8 squares that are surrounding the granary. So if I had a granary in this space, I could build a cottage in any of these spaces around it to score points. Green buildings represent sort of food and hospitality, tavern, inn, feast hall, almshouse. And again, all of these score uniquely. For example, the tavern will score points based on the number of taverns you've built. These black buildings are sort of industrial factory type buildings. These often don't score points, but provide unique ways to manipulate resources later in the game. The orange buildings represent sort of religious buildings or church type buildings, abbey, cloister, chapel, temple. The yellow buildings are sort of stores or entertainment, theater, market, tailor, bakery. And these gray buildings are sort of small features, fountain, millstone, shed, and well. And then finally, as I mentioned, each player gets a unique building that's unique to that player. And we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 cards representing monuments, which are the unique building that each player gets. And this gives great variety to the game. Each of these buildings have very unique shapes and very unique scoring conditions. So each player will receive one of these buildings. So that means every time you play Tiny Towns, you will be receiving 8 buildings, 7 of which are shared, 1 of which never changes from game to game, and 1 of which is unique to each player. And building these buildings will trigger the scoring conditions at the bottom, and again, whoever has the most points at the end of the game is the winner. But how do we build these buildings? That's the other thing that makes this game very unique. Each turn, all players will be receiving a resource. Everybody will receive the same resource, and the way that these resources is received is what makes the difference between the multiplayer and the solo and the variant rules. I'll explain that last. But once you get a resource, let's talk about what happens with that resource. So say for example, I get a glass resource. Blue cube represents glass. Once I've received this resource, I need to put the resource somewhere on my town. with the hope that this resource will later help me build one of these buildings. For example, the statue of the bondmaker has 1 glass cube. The tavern has 1 glass cube. The bakery needs 1 glass cube. The abbey needs a glass. The cottage needs a glass. So I'm going to place that resource. And that resource will stay on the board until the building is constructed. So every turn, we're going to receive a resource. Here's a brick. We place that resource. We receive a resource. Here's a wheat. We place that resource. At the end of a turn, we're going to check our resources against the buildings. And if we have any pattern on our board that matches the pattern of a building, we can, and I say can because you can choose not to, but we can replace all of the cubes with a building. But until that building is built, we cannot remove any of these cubes from the board. So that means as we're building, these are starting to get in the way of our building other buildings at the same time. One very important thing to mention is the pattern here can be rotated and can also be mirror imaged or flipped. So for example, this red, blue, yellow here on the cottage is perfectly represented here by red, blue, yellow. And at the same time, it would be the same thing in this direction. Again, we can rotate and flip the pattern as much as we want, so long as the order of the cubes matches the order of the cubes on the card. So if at the end of my turn I had this pattern, I could remove these 3 cubes and place a cottage on any of the 3 spaces that I removed the cubes from. So I might put the cottage in the corner of the map. So we continue in that fashion, placing cubes and so on, until we can build buildings. So for example, if my next cube was a brick, I might place it here, hoping to maybe build a tavern in the future. But then maybe if my next cube was some wood, I'm not going to put that there because it's going to block, but maybe I'll start working, say, on a factory down in this bottom corner. And then the next cube that comes up is a brick again. I can choose to place here, hoping to build a factory, or I could place here, hoping to build a tavern, or I could start somewhere completely different, maybe starting one here, hoping to use this corner to build a cottage. Keeping in mind the entire time that these resources will not move until a building is placed. So if you're not careful, you could very quickly block yourself from being able to build anything at all. One more thing that's very important to mention. This monument that's unique to each player may only be built once per game. All of the other buildings may be built as many times as you can possibly fit them into your town mat. So now that we've seen how resources are placed and how buildings are built, where do those resources come from? In the standard multiplayer version of Tiny Towns, each turn, one of the players becomes the master builder, represented by this first player token. And at the end of each round, this will be passed to the next player in clockwise order. So when you are the master builder, it is your job to select the resource. You can choose any resource that you would like to place on your town board, and all other players must choose and place the same resource. Again, on the next round, this will pass to the next player, and that next player, who is now the master builder, will select the resource of their choice, and all other players must also use the same resource. There are also 2 different variants for this game. In the solo version of this game, these cards will be used, representing different resources. When we play the solo game, we shuffle these resource cards, and we choose 3 of them. We then use one of these chosen resources, putting it to the bottom of the deck, and select a new one. Every turn using one, returning it to the bottom of the deck, and choosing a new resource. In addition to the normal multiplayer and solo rules, there is also something called the Town Hall variant. And in the Town Hall variant, these cards are used as well. Only in the Town Hall variant, each round, one card is going to be chosen, and all players will use the resource drawn from the deck. However, every third round, no card will be drawn, and instead, all players will choose a resource of their own choosing. And it will repeat this way. So the first and second round, cards will be randomly drawn. In the third round, all players will choose their own resource. In the fourth and fifth round, cards will be drawn. In the sixth round, all players will choose their own resource, and so on. This variant can be used in a solo game, a multiplayer game, and is also very useful for playing online with other players through Zoom or any other kind of online system. When a player's player mat is completely filled with buildings and/or resources, or the player realizes that there is no more possibility for them to place any further buildings on their player board, that player is finished for the game and may begin scoring. To begin, that player will remove all of the remaining resources from their board, and will then follow the scoring descriptions at the bottom of each building card to score the buildings on their town board. In addition, any space that is now empty and has no building in it will score -1 point at the end of the game, which means you should be very careful about placing as many buildings as possible before finishing the game. The player with the highest score at the end of the game is the winner. In the case of a tie, the person who has been the master builder the fewest number of times will be the winner. If there is still a tie, the win goes to the person who has the fewest empty squares in their town. And following that, if there is still a tie, the player with the most cottages in their town is the winner. In the case that there is still a tie, the players share the win. For my playthrough of Tiny Towns today, I'm going to be using the Town Hall variant so that all of you who are watching can follow along if you own a copy and play the game with me. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to set up the game, choosing the buildings, and I will go through and explain the scoring conditions for each of the buildings that I choose. To begin with, of course, we start with the cottage. The cottage doesn't ever change. So for this game, the cottage, well, for all games, the cottage is 3 points per cottage if the cottage is fed. Now remember, fed means we need to have a red building that's supplying food to that cottage. Next, we'll choose our red building. For this game, we will be using the granary. The granary is the one I showed in the how to play for this game. It says that we feed all cottages that are in the 8 squares surrounding the granary. All right, next, the green building. A green building, we're going to have the almshouse. This scores positive points for an even number of almshouses or negative points for an odd number of almshouses. Next, the yellow building. For the yellow building, this time we're going to use the bakery. The bakery scores 3 points for every bakery that's adjacent to either our red buildings or our black buildings. For the black building, we will choose the factory. The factory says when constructed, place one of the 5 resources on the factory. And then when another player, we're not using another player, we're using the draw deck today. So anytime a resource comes up in the draw deck that matches the resource on the factory, you can choose a different resource instead. Next, the orange. We're going to use the temple. The temple says you get 4 points if it's adjacent to 2 or more fed cottages. And finally, our gray feature, we will be using the shed, which says it will score 1 point per shed, and you can construct it on any empty square in your town. This means that even if you build, for example, a brown resource or a wood resource here and a stone resource here, you do not have to press the shed in one of these two spaces. You can put it anywhere on your town board. Now for the final card, I'm going to choose a monument for myself. Your monument will be randomly chosen from your deck, so it was likely not going to be the same monument as mine. In fact, I'd recommend that you choose a different monument than mine, just to make it more interesting. So we'll choose a monument somewhere in the middle here. And I'm going to go with the Archive of the Second Age. This says I get 1 point for each unique building type other than this monument in my town. So if I decide to use this, I need to work really hard to build pretty much all of the other buildings if I can. All right, so I'm going to take a minute to look at these cards, and I'll discuss what I'm thinking as I'm looking through them. I will put a timestamp below and a chapter into the video so you can skip ahead to the gameplay if you don't want to hear my thoughts on what I'm planning. All right, so to start off, we've got the granary, which means I need to build cottages around the granary. So I want to pick a spot, for example, maybe here, and then I want to build cottages around that granary. Keeping in mind, though, this temple says I need to be adjacent to 2 or more fed cottages, and they score more points than the cottages themselves. So I may want to do it so that there are cottages on the corners, and then some temples in those spots, possibly. Sheds fill in spaces nicely. Bakery I want to have next to an almshouse, and I need to have even numbers of almshouses. So if I could alternate almshouse and bakery so that I at least have 2 almshouses and at least 1 bakery, we would be good. The factory is very, very useful in this game because it will let me choose more of my own resources if I'm not picky. I don't see a whole lot of wood in my cards, so I might want to build a factory with a wood on top so that I can use things other than the wood when wood comes up. So that's something I might think about doing early. And this monument, I'll save till late in the game. If I can get most of the other things built, then I'll throw a monument in to try and score some extra points. All right, so to get started, we're playing the Town Hall variant. That means the first thing I'm going to do is remove 5 resource cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and set those aside. And then we'll shuffle the rest of the cards. So I'm going to be drawing the resource cards. As I draw them, I'll put them up here in this blank space. So we get 1 resource card, a 2nd resource card, and then the 3rd round is always your choice. So after you make your own choice, I'll clear it and we'll do the same thing. When these cards run out, we'll go through the same procedure again. For anybody who is playing along with me, please feel free to leave a comment down below talking about which monument you're using and what your final score was. I'm just curious to see how everybody else does and how our scores compare. All right, so if you're ready to get started, the first resource we're going to be using is glass. So I generally like to start with a cottage. They're quick to build, they're easy to build, and we know what we're doing with them. So I'm going to put a glass up in this corner. Our next resource is wood. I mentioned in the opening that I think I might want to start with a factory early so that I can start skipping wood if I don't want it. Now our 3rd resource is a resource of our choice. I'll give you a minute to think. I'm going to go with brick and build onto my cottage. All right, so we'll clear these away. Our next resource is a stone. I'm going to keep working on that factory for now. I like to clear up my board, build some buildings before I start flooding it with extra resources. Our next resource is a brick, which works perfectly well with my factory down here in the corner. Again, we're on to our third round. This time is your choice. I'm gonna go ahead and choose to place a wheat here, building my first cottage up here in the corner. All right, let's clear those out. Next resource is a brick. Let's see. I was thinking about building a temple in that corner. Sorry, in here next to my cottage. So let's start working on that as well. Put a brick there. And my next resource is stone. Maybe I should have used that brick in the factory, but we'll see how that plays out. I'm gonna keep working on my factory with the stone. And again, we're back on a third round, so this is your choice again. I'm actually gonna choose to go with the brick this time, so that now I can clear that out and build my factory. And as I mentioned in the beginning, I'm going to put a wood on that factory because I would like to have the ability to use things other than wood. I don't need a whole lot of wood in this game. In fact, aside from the shed, I'm only going to build one granary, likely, so I think that's probably all I'm going to need wood for. Hey, look at that. We get a wood. I'm working on a temple right now, and I want my granary to go here. And I'm hoping my temple goes like this, means I don't want to put a wood there. So I'm going to go ahead and use that factory ability, and I'm going to place, yeah, I'll go ahead and place a second brick there. My next resource is a brick. Now I kind of regret doing that, but let's see what else we can do. I need to use these two spaces. So I'm gonna start working down in this corner. I'm gonna build a bakery here. No. Bakery scores, I made a mistake in the setup. Bakery scores when it's adjacent to a farm, or sorry, a granary in this case, or a factory, not almshouses. I don't know what I was thinking. So I need to put it here maybe if I want a bakery. So let's start working on that now. And I'll put that brick here. All right, so now we're back to a third round again, which means your choice. And I am going to focus on, let's see, I need two blues. I need a blue for the temple and I need a blue glass for the bakery. So I'm going to place one of those. And I'll do the one up here for the temple because I want that cleared first so I can work on more cottages in my granary. So the next, oh, look at that, I'm glad we did that. I get a glass. So I'm gonna put my other glass down here. Our next resource is a stone, which is perfect for me because the stone goes here and completes my temple. So I clear those and I'm going to place a temple right here next to my cottage. Now we get to choose a resource of our own liking. And I want to build a cottage in this corner. And I better do that now or we're gonna start blocking ourselves in. So I'm just going to choose randomly because we're gonna shuffle and get a whole new set of cards again. I'm gonna put a wheat there. Let's get those other cards back again. We'll shuffle them up. I will take again 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Give it one more good shuffle. All right. Now to our second set of resources. We're going to start with glass, which is perfect for me to start, or sorry, to continue working on my cottage. And my next resource is wood, which I don't need for the cottage, but I will need for a granary, and the granary is the next thing I want to start building here. I know this is a piece for my cottage, but I can start building half of the granary here. So I'm going to take that wood, and I'm going to put that wood here. Because now, on a third round, we choose our own resource. I'm going to choose that brick, and by doing so, I complete my cottage there. Alright, our next resource will be another wood. Now right now I have 0 need for wood, so I'm going to use my factory ability to turn that wood into something else. I am focused on that granary, and I need 2 wheat and a brick. Now if I choose the brick and a brick comes up next round, that's wasteful for me. So I'm going to choose a wheat. It doesn't really matter where I put it. Let's put that there. My next resource is, look at that, a wheat. So it didn't really matter, but now I get my second wheat, which should go, yeah, that's fine, there. And now we get to choose a resource of our own. So for me, I think it's clear that I will choose that brick, clear that off, and place my granary right there in the middle. So now those 2 cottages are fed, and that means my temple is already scoring the 4 points as well. All right, moving on to our next resource. We've got glass. Now, I do want to build more cottages in those corners, as I mentioned, but I would really like to get another temple here or here if I can. I'm still working on that bakery at the bottom, which means I need another brick and another wheat. I should build 2 almshouses, because if I can get one of everything, then this is going to score me lots of points. So let me work on building. Let's see. I don't like that. Yeah, no, I'm going to work on building the temple first. And I'm going to hope that the temple builds out here like this. So I'm going to start with a glass on the corner there. And then we get a brick. Well, let's try and focus on getting this bakery taken care of. And now we get any choice of our own. So I will clear that. And I will take wheat, which builds me a bakery. And I will put my bakery here. And now it's adjacent to the factory, so it does get me 3 points. And we pull our next resource, a stone, which I do need for my temple, so I will put that there. The next resource is a brick, which again I also need for the temple, which is very nice for me because now it's time for a third round, which means I get my choice, and my choice will clearly be a brick. So I can go there and throw another temple right there. Next resource coming up is wheat. So wheat says, good for me, because I want to build, I don't like doing that one yet, because that kills my corner. Although, yeah, you know what? This scores 1 point for each unique building type at the end of the game. So I'm going to try and get one of those down here in the corner. So I'm going to throw a yellow right there. And what do you know, I get another wheat. So I'm going to go ahead and throw another wheat right there. So now we're on to one more round of choose your own. Might as well. I'll choose a brick to go there. Now we prep for another set of resource cards. So we remove 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Give it another shuffle. Cut there. And we start the next round with a brick, which is kind of sad because that's what I just built. I wouldn't mind one more temple here. So I'm gonna put a brick there to start working on that. And my next resource is wood, which means anything to me. So I will put a glass there, completing my monument, which I will put down here in the corner. And now we get a resource of our choice. And I'm going to actually use that resource of my choice. I'm going to put a shed down here in the corner. Yeah? Maybe not. I'm going to try, because this is going to be down to here. I have this whole row. I'm going to try to put, an almshouse down here in the corner. So we'll start with a gray cube there. Now I pull a resource, which is glass. Glass works great for that almshouse I just started, so that can go there. Next resource I draw is another glass. That's less exciting for me. I'm going to... I need this open. And I need this open, so I'm going to put a glass there. Oh, wait a minute, no. The temple needs a glass. The temple is here, this goes here. And now I get to choose a resource of my own. I will choose stone, putting it there, and completing my almshouse. Now I really need to make sure I build one more almshouse before the end, or I'm in trouble. But we'll focus on that in a minute. The next resource we draw is a wheat. And a wheat I don't need, except for a cottage right now. But I want a cottage here. So if I can build this, and then I can build a cottage there. So I'll put a yellow there and we'll see what happens. I draw another resource. Ooh, that's a stone. I like that, because I can put a stone there. A stone there. And now we get to draw our own resource again. I'm going to draw a brick, goes there, and I clear that to add me one more temple there. So if I can build this, I've got one more cottage there, which would be very nice. So let's see what comes up next. I get a stone. Stone is less exciting. I'm gonna put a stone here. A stone here will be actually very helpful, because I can build an almshouse this way, or I can build a shed here, both of which would be very nice to work with my Archive of the Second Age. Next resource is wood, means I can place anything. So my almshouse needs a gray and a blue. My cottage needs a red and a blue. But I can place that wood as a wood. You know what? I'm going to place the wood as a wood just to get that out of the way. I place the wood as a wood and I build my first shed. And I can place that anywhere, but I like it right there. And now I get to choose one of my own. So I'm going to choose, let's say glass. Because I can still use another glass. No, I can't. Yes, I could. I could still use another glass here to build an almshouse if it comes up. Next resource is wood, means my choice, which is great. Because I can put that there and finish another cottage. Which is wonderful, because it means that this is built. And I just realized I made a mistake. I could go back and fix it, but I'm not going to. I shouldn't have put this here, because now this isn't going to score at all. That was a mistake, but I'll take my mistake. All right, then what do I want to do? I definitely need to build one more almshouse. And I could build another cottage. Well, let's see what comes up, and we'll plan from that. We've got a wheat. Wheat doesn't help me at all with the almshouse. So that scares me a little bit, but I'm going to put it here because it's not really in the way. And then, to end this round, I get to choose my own resource. I will choose a stone, because the almshouse needs 2 of them. And I'll put it here because it's not doing any harm for now. So let's prep the deck for the next set. I shuffle. I take the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Set those aside. All right, so we draw our next resource is going to be a wheat. That hurts. That hurts a lot. Okay, so I'm just going to stick a wheat in this corner and nothing I can do about it. We draw our next resource is wood. Well, I can't build my almshouse anymore. So I'm going to take that wood and build one more shed. That's sad. I'm going to put that shed here, and that's the end of my game because there's nothing I can do with this wheat problem in the corner. So next, you can choose one more resource. And I'm going to assume that some of you are still building, so I'm going to finish this round of resources. We've got 4 more sets of 2 resources plus yours, so let's go through all of these and then we'll stop. So the next resource is a stone. Followed by another stone. And then your choice. Then we have a wheat, followed by glass, and your choice. Then we have glass, followed by wood, and your choice. And finally we have brick, followed by glass, and then your choice. I hope that's enough cards for you. If not, I apologize. But I think we spent quite enough time. I'm going to remove these 2 resources, and now I'm going to go get my scoring pad and we will score for my game. Alright, so to score my game, we start with the factory, scores nothing. Cottages. I have 1, 2, 3 cottages that are fed. 3 times 3 is 9 points. Temples. This temple is between 2 fed cottages. This temple is between 2 fed cottages. This temple, unfortunately, I failed here. So I get 2 of them. 2 times 4 is 8 points. Here's where I made a big problem. This almshouse is my only almshouse. I didn't get a chance to build that second one. Minus 1 point. My bakery. I have 1 bakery. It is adjacent to my factory. That scores 3 points. My sheds, I have 2 of them. Each one worth 1 point is 2. My archive is worth number of different buildings except this. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Because I managed to build every type of building on the board. That's a 7, and I get minus 1, 2, 3 for my empty spaces. So my total is 9 plus 8, 17. Minus 1 is 16, plus 3 is 19. 20, 21, 28 minus 3. I finish with a score of 25. Again, my final score is a 25. Leave a comment below. Which monument building did you use? And what was your final score? Alright, while we're down here, let's talk a little bit about the components of the game and the box and so on. Let's start with the cards. The cards are a little bit bigger than a normal sized playing card, but I like that. Really, really clear. I mean, obviously the building type is shown in the corner of the card. It's very easy to see what you need to build them. Some of the text is a little bit long, but that's fine. I'd rather the text be on the card than have to remember what each building does. And by doing that, they can keep making more and more buildings that have unique scoring conditions, because everything is placed right on the card. Also, I really, really like that every card has unique artwork, and the artwork is really, really, really nicely done. A lot of these cards have really nice sort of characters that are on the cards as well. These cards are just really colorful, great art, great design, really pop. The backs of the cards clearly are the color of the building, so it's very easy to quickly figure out, you know, which deck is which building, shuffle them out and get set up for the game. So in general, I really, really like the cards of this game. While we're talking about cards, of course, there are also the resource cards. These are a little bit boring, but that's fine. That's what they need to be. It's very clear written here what the resource is, and also very, very big, colorful square. Shows me exactly what it is. I don't have to struggle to look. I just pull a card and it's very clear instantly which resource it is. So they're incredibly functional, so there's no real need for them to be any more over-designed for any reason. The next thing we should talk about, the player boards are nice. They're a little bit drab, but that doesn't matter because this. I am a huge fan of chunky wooden pieces, and this game is full of chunky wooden pieces. These buildings are all uniquely shaped, uniquely colored. They're very, very easy to see what they represent just by looking. I really like these buildings a lot, and again, very nice chunky components. The resources as well, they're just simple cubes, but the colors really pop. They just feel really nice in your hand. I just love wooden components, and these don't let me down. One thing I might be of concern is that because they're all the same shape, if you're colorblind, it might be a problem. But I did go ahead and look online, and there is talk that these were very, very clearly designed so that none of the colors overlapped close enough that even if you did have color blindness, you should easily be able to tell the colors apart, even if you can't correctly identify what each color is. So they are designed with that in mind. So it really shouldn't be a problem. The only other real components in the game are the first player marker. Again, chunky wooden component. I like it. I think it's a bit of a waste. We don't really need it, but why not, right? It looks cool, it feels nice, and it's very easy to pass around the table. So that's nice. And the last thing the game comes with is this pad of score sheets. There's lots of score sheets. I suppose it could have been double-sided. It's sort of a waste not to have it printed on the back. But, I mean, each page has enough for 6 players, which could be how many you have in a game. But if I keep playing solo, or if I keep playing with 2 or 3 players, I can use one sheet several times and it will last for a while. And realistically, you don't really need it, right? I could do it on a piece of paper, I could do it in a calculator, I could do it without it. It's just nice to have. It's helpful. We might as well throw it in the box, so why not? It's great. Very, very clear, very easy to understand what each column goes to. So yeah, I'm glad they put this in there. The other thing I do want to talk about while we're down here is the box for the game. The box is pretty big. When I first saw this game, you know, pictures of the game, pieces in the game and play online, it looked like a small game, and the name Tiny Towns made me feel like it was a small game. But when I picked it up, it's a big box. This is a normal sort of Ticket to Ride size 12 by 12 square box. And I'm not sure the game really warrants that. When you look inside, you can see there's a whole lot of empty space in this box. That said, I want to talk a little bit about the organizer that they've used in the box. Couple things. There are a couple really good things and a couple things that I'm not super satisfied with. The cards for the buildings fit very nicely in this, and then on top of that, all of the game boards and the score sheet have a great spot to go in. And these cutout holes here make it really easy to pull those out and then to pull the cards out later. In addition, there's plenty of space in there for expansion cards. And the same thing is true for these resource cards. The resource cards fit in this little hole right here. And you can see there's a ton of extra space in there. So if there's any future content that fits that same size card, there's plenty of space in the box. So these card holders and the board game the game board holders, I really like. That said, these two spaces are a little bit more concerning. Because realistically, if I take these resources and I just throw them in that hole, they may stay in there, they may not stay in there, but really, I probably want them in a bag. But more importantly, if you look here in the bottom of this tray, you can see all the different prints of the building shapes, which is great. I like that they did that, it looks nice. It is strange though, it's missing the monument piece. I'm assuming the monuments are meant to go in there, because I don't see a monument anywhere else in the insert. But if I just tossed all the buildings in there, it's not really gonna hold them, and they're gonna slide all over the place when I put it on the shelf. I could use bags, and I can separate them into bags. That's probably the best way to do it easily. But if I put every building in its own bag, then every time we play the game and set up the game, I have to open, 7, 8 different bags, including and plus the resources, so 9 bags. Or I could throw everything in one bag, but then when I need something, I gotta dig through the bag to find the thing that I want. So I think this big, wide open trough was a bit of a strange decision. I'm sure many people will have different, unique ways to get around that, but out of the box, it seems like a strange decision to me. And again, I understand the big boxes to make it look nice on the shelf with everything else, but realistically, as it stands, I'm not sure this box needs to be this big, regardless of whether or not the insert is well designed. But again, the nice thing is there is space in here for expansion content, and I know there's already one expansion and they're planning for a second, so the extra space will be nice to have. So let's go back up top and I'll talk about how I feel about the game itself. So that was Tiny Towns, designed by Peter McPherson and published by AEG. I hope you enjoyed my playthrough of the game, or even better, if you had a chance to, I hope you enjoyed playing along with me. So let's talk a little bit about what I think of this game. I'm just going to come right out and say I really enjoy this game. I wasn't quite sure whether or not I would going into it, and I was a little bit hesitant to pick it up, but I'm very glad I picked it up because I enjoy this one quite a bit. I will say the scoring condition idea reminds me a lot of other games like Quadropolis, Between Two Cities, Castles of Mad King Ludwig, in which the different types of buildings have unique scoring conditions, and they often score based on how many you have, or their positions on the board, or how they're connected to other buildings on the board. But I think Tiny Towns is unique in several ways. First, I really like that each building type comes with several different cards, and each card is a different scoring condition and a different building for that piece. And more importantly, as expansions come out for this game, it's very easy to put out more cards to create more buildings using the pieces that are already in the box. And that's great, because that means every time I play, there's a different puzzle to play. And everything plays out very differently, not just depending on the buildings you have, but the mix of buildings you have and how they interact with each other. So it really is a unique experience every time. Other games like Quadropolis, the buildings are always the same every game, and that's a lot of fun. But eventually you see the same patterns, and you sort of come up with strategies that you focus on every time you play the game. But for this game, because it's changing every time, there isn't really that strategy that you're relying on every time. You might see patterns that come out, and you might focus on those patterns, or you might develop a personal style of gameplay. But you're not going to get that same pattern every single time because these cards are so incredibly mixed. Now, on top of that, the way that you're building the buildings in this game is really fun to me. The fact that we're placing resource cubes that are actually blocking spaces on the board that then get cleared to be replaced by buildings is a really, really clever way of doing this system. We're not just taking a tile and placing a tile. We're not just taking a building and placing a building. We have to do double planning. We have to plan, how do we build these shapes to even get this building built without blocking other shapes to build other buildings? And then once I've placed a building, have I ruined the other spaces around it so that I can't build other buildings? Like you see at the end of my playthrough, there's two spots, well three because there was a resource, right? There were those three spots on my board that I couldn't do anything with because the way that I had put everything else out, when I didn't get the exact resource I needed, I was completely out of luck. And I really like that challenge. Yes, there's some randomness to it, but that randomness is what I like. You're working with that system to make sure that the predictions you're making work in an efficient way to build these buildings. And I really like that. Now, there are a couple different ways to play the game. I haven't played the multiplayer game yet, so I can't talk about that specifically, but I will come back and talk about it a little bit in a minute. About the solo game. The official solo rules are that you draw 3 cards, you choose one, you use it, you put it to the bottom of the deck, you choose another one, you use it, you put it to the bottom of the deck, and you keep going through like that. So after you've gone through the deck one time, you sort of know the order of the cards. And not only do you know the order of the cards, but you're creating the order of the cards. And I can see that could be a really nice puzzle or a really nice logic system for somebody who's playing this game. Me personally, I prefer the Town Hall variant, and let me explain why. I tend to be a player who likes more tactical decisions and not long-term strategic planning. And I think that with the built-in solo version, the out-of-the-box solo version, it requires me to think too far ahead about what are the orders that I'm putting the cards in so I can sort of predict what's going to happen later. And that's a great thought, but it's too much forward thinking for me. I don't get enjoyment out of that in games. I prefer to be offered with some kind of challenge or some kind of random element that comes at me, and then take that random element and do my best with it. And with the Town Hall variant, I'm being randomly assigned resources, and I have to do my best to deal with the resources that I'm being assigned. And I really like that. And the fact that every third round is my own choice sort of makes it feel a little bit more like the multiplayer game. And I really like that puzzle, right? I like to be able to had something thrown at me randomly and say, here, deal with it. And I deal with it in good or bad, hoping that the next thing is something that will help me. And I don't know. It's that randomness that I really, really like to have to mitigate while I'm playing the game. So let's go back to the multiplayer for a minute. I haven't played multiplayer, so I can't comment directly on it. But I do see how it could be really fun in either way. I mean, I already said I like the Town Hall variant. So in a multiplayer game, playing the Town Hall variant, I could see that could be very, very fun. But also the built-in multiplayer rules, the actual rules to the game, where we're taking turns choosing a resource, I see could also be really, really cool. Because then you're playing off of your opponents, right? Which makes the game not just be a multiplayer solitaire game, but something that there's actually interaction at the table. I see you need this resource, so I'm not going to choose that resource so that you can't have that resource. Whether that helps me or hurts me, we have to see, but I like that thought, that decision that needs to be made. And on top of that, I do see that there are some buildings that will sort of take away your ability to choose resources, right? It stops you from being the master builder, but gives you something big in return. So those kinds of buildings are really only fully useful if you're playing the actual multiplayer game. Again, I haven't played the multiplayer game, so I can't make any specific comments about it, but that's my thoughts on it right there. That said, I really enjoy this game. I said that already, I'll say it again. It's a great game. There is one expansion out now that adds coins that trigger specific things. Actually, I think what you do is you build, if you can build 2 buildings on the same turn, you get coins, and then you can use those coins later to trade them in for resources or other things. I don't have a copy of it yet, so I can't give you any specifics, but I will be picking up a copy, I promise, and I would love to show you that when I do get it. That's called Fortunes, Tiny Town's Fortunes. And there is another expansion coming soon, Tiny Town Villagers, that add little villager maples. Both expansions add a ton of new buildings as well, so it's just giving you more not random, but more variable content to just expand this game more and more. I will be getting both of those, and I look forward to sharing with you later. Talk to you soon.